Some stories are told in whispers, hidden in dusty folders, forgotten in dark cabinets, but sometimes the stories don't stay locked away. They find you, they demand to be told. This is one of those stories. The Patient Files, a story of a psychologist, a client, and a truth so terrifying it blurred the line between reality and madness. What you're about to hear is based on real notes, real sessions, and a descent into fear that no one could escape. Dr. Alan Mercer was meticulous, 43 years old, clinical psychologist, known for his calm demeanor and his perfectly organized office. His patients said he had the kind of voice that could quiet a storm, but even storms leave wreckage. It was a Tuesday morning when his receptionist buzzed him. "Your new client is here, Dr. Mercer. Name's Daniel Holt. First session." Alan nodded, glanced at the file. Thin, barely a page. Age 32. Referred for anxiety, insomnia, obsessive thoughts, nothing unusual. He opened the door to the waiting room, and there he was. Daniel Holt sat perfectly still, hands clasped, eyes fixed on the floor. When he looked up, Alan felt it immediately. The intensity, eyes that seemed to hold a weight far heavier than insomnia. "Mr. Holt?" Alan asked, extending a hand. Daniel shook it. Cold. Too cold. They sat in the office. Alan clicked his pen, opened his notebook. Routine. Structure. Safety. "So," Alan began, "tell me why you're here." Daniel's voice was quiet, deliberate. "I dream things," he said. "Things that happen. Things that shouldn't." Alan wrote a note. "Delusional content? Possible schizotypal features." "Can you give me an example?" Alan asked gently. Daniel's lips curved. Not a smile. Not quite. "Last week," he said, "I dreamed of a car accident. Red sedan, woman inside, phone in her hand, crash at an intersection. I woke up, turned on the news, and it had already happened." Alan paused. "Coincidence? And before that?" Daniel leaned forward. His voice dropped. "I dreamed of you." The pen froze in Alan's hand. Me?" "Yes," Daniel said calmly. "This office, these shelves, you, sitting in that chair, you asking me about my dreams." Alan shifted slightly. "Transference. Fantasy projection. Nothing more." He smiled politely. "Dreams are powerful, but they don't predict the future, Daniel. They reflect the unconscious. Fears. Desires." Daniel interrupted. "Then why am I always right?" The silence stretched too long. Alan wrote more notes, masking his unease. "We'll explore this together. For now, tell me about the dreams that bother you most." Daniel's eyes sharpened. "The ones I can't stop," he whispered. "The ones where people die, where I watch it happen, and where, sometimes, I'm the one doing it." Alan's pen stopped again. He looked up slowly. Daniel wasn't smiling. He wasn't shaking. He wasn't delusional in the way Alan expected. He was calm, dead calm. "And what do you feel in those dreams?" Alan asked carefully. Daniel leaned back. His answer was chilling. "I feel nothing." That was the first session. A man claiming his dreams were real. A man who said he had already dreamed of the therapist listening to him. For Dr. Mercer, it was only the beginning. But the deeper he listened, the more he realized Daniel Holt wasn't just telling stories. He was rewriting reality itself. Alan adjusted his glasses as Daniel entered. Same pale expression, same slow, deliberate steps. He didn't glance at the room. Didn't need to. He already knew it. "Good morning, Daniel," Alan began, trying to sound calm. Daniel sat, folded his hands. Silence stretched. Finally, Alan asked, "Did you dream again?" Daniel nodded. "Yes." "About you?" Alan forced a smile. "Tell me." Daniel tilted his head, studying Alan with unnerving intensity. "You drive a silver Honda, don't you?" Alan's pen hovered above the paper. "How would you know that?" "I saw it," Daniel said simply. "In the dream, Parked by the grocery store. Last night, you bought milk, bread, and something else you didn't tell your wife. Alan froze. His chest tightened. He had, in fact, stopped by the store. He had, in fact, bought milk and bread, and the pack of cigarettes. He hadn't smoked in years. His wife didn't know. He cleared his throat. Daniel, let's talk about boundaries. Dreams can't. They can, Daniel interrupted. I see the truth. Not the future, not the past. Just truth. Alan leaned back, keeping his composure. Delusion reinforced by coincidences. Nothing more. And what truth do you see now? Alan asked. Daniel's lips curved faintly. That you're afraid of me. Alan's hand twitched. He forced a chuckle. Therapists don't fear their patients. Yes, they do, Daniel said. His eyes didn't blink, especially when the patient is inside their life. Silence. Alan's pen moved automatically across the paper, but his notes dissolved into meaningless scribbles. Alan told himself it was coincidence, that Daniel Holt was clever, observant, manipulative even, but not supernatural. Still, doubt had already planted its seed, and doubt, once planted, grows fast. That evening, after Daniel left, Alan sat at his desk long after the office closed. He pulled Daniel's file. Thin, incomplete, no previous therapy, no criminal record, no psychiatric hospitalizations, just a name, a birthday, an address. Something was missing. Alan called the referring physician, listed on the intake form. The receptionist on the other end hesitated. There's no patient by that name in our system, Dr. Mercer. Alan frowned. That's impossible. The form came from your clinic. A pause. Then the voice, low and uncertain. I've been here 10 years. We've never referred a Daniel Holt. Click. The line went dead. Alan sat back, file in hand, stomach sinking. If Daniel hadn't been referred, who had sent him? The third dream. At the next session, Alan confronted him. There seems to be a mistake with your paperwork, Daniel. The referring clinic says they've never heard of you. Daniel smiled faintly. Of course they haven't. Alan narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? Daniel leaned forward. Because I don't come from there. I come from here. Here, Daniel's gaze sharpened. From you. From your dreams. Alan laughed. A short, sharp sound. Daniel, patients don't come from their therapist's dreams. Daniel's voice dropped to a whisper. Then why did you dream of me? Before we met. Alan's blood turned cold. He hadn't told anyone, not his wife, not his colleagues, but the night before Daniel's first session, Alan had dreamed of a man sitting across from him in his office, pale, silent, watching. He had woken unsettled, shaken it off as stress. Now the man from that dream sat before him. It was coincidence. It had to be. That's what Alan told himself, that Daniel was playing into his subconscious fears. But deep down, Alan knew the line between coincidence and design had already blurred. The confessional steadied his voice. Why are you here, Daniel? What do you want from me? Daniel's answer was immediate. To tell you how it ends. Alan swallowed. How what ends? Your life. Alan's hand trembled. He gripped the pen so tightly, it nearly snapped. Daniel, threats are not tolerated in this office. Daniel didn't blink. Didn't raise his voice. It's not a threat. It's the truth. I dreamed it. I saw it. And you can't stop it. The session ended early that day. Alan's composure cracked. Only after Daniel left, he sat in the empty office. The silence pressing in. The file open before him. One page, one name, one man who knew too much, and a dream Alan couldn't shake. Session 2 revealed more than Alan wanted to know. Cigarettes, secrets, dreams that lined up too closely with reality. And for the first time in his career, Dr. Mercer realized he was afraid of his own patient, but fear was only the beginning. By the third session, Dr. Alan Mercer's hands were not as steady. His notes were shorter, his penmanship uneven. The professional mask he wore was beginning to crack, because Daniel Holt wasn't just a patient anymore. He was something else. The clock ticked louder than usual as Alan waited. Daniel arrived right on time, as always. Same pale face, same slow, deliberate entrance. But this time, Alan noticed something chilling. Daniel glanced, not at Alan, but at the framed photograph on the desk. Alan's wife, Julia, smiling in the garden. Their daughter, Emily, holding a balloon. Daniel's lips curled faintly. Beautiful family, he said. Alan's pulse spiked. You shouldn't be looking at that. Daniel ignored the warning, his eyes fixed on the photo. Emily's 6 now, isn't she? She likes the blue dress with the flowers, and the stuffed rabbit she won't sleep without. Alan's jaw clenched. How do you know that? Daniel finally turned his gaze back to him. Because she told me. Last night. Alan leaned forward, voice low, harsh. You stay away from my family. Daniel didn't flinch. He simply tilted his head. I don't have to go anywhere. They come to me, in the dreams. Your wife, too. She cries. Alan. She cries when you don't tell her the truth. Alan's throat tightened. He thought of the hidden pack of cigarettes in his car, the late nights at the office, the things Julia didn't know. You're lying, Alan muttered. Daniel smiled. Am I? Alan told himself Daniel was manipulating him, digging under his skin with vague guesses, but the details were too sharp, too intimate, too real, and each word left Alan with a question he didn't dare answer. What if Daniel wasn't lying? The dream journal. That night, Alan couldn't sleep. He sat in his study with a notebook, scribbling down his dreams before they faded. First dream, his office. The sound of a ticking clock, louder, faster, until the hands spun wildly. Second dream, his wife, standing in the doorway, face blurred, whispering something he couldn't hear. Third dream, Daniel, sitting in the corner of his daughter's room, smiling as Emily slept. Alan woke, drenched in sweat, heart pounding. He stumbled to his daughter's room, opened the door. Emily was safe, Rabbit clutched in her arms, breathing softly. But for a moment, just a flicker, Alan swore he smelled the faintest trace of Daniel's cologne. The breakdown. At the next session, Alan broke his own rule. He raised his voice. If you mention my family again, Daniel, this ends. Therapy ends. Do you understand? Daniel watched him calmly. You can't end it. Alan's fists clenched. Why not? Daniel leaned forward, voice low. Because I'm not your patient. You are mine. Alan's breath caught. I sit here, Daniel continued, and you talk. You write your little notes. You hide your guilt. But it's you on the couch, Alan. It's always been you. Alan slammed the notebook shut. Enough. But Daniel didn't move. Didn't blink. You'll see soon, he whispered. The dreams don't lie. They never do. Alan Mercer was unraveling. The boundaries between doctor and patient had collapsed, between dream and waking, blurred. And still he returned each week, because some part of him needed to know how the story ended. The shadow at home. One evening, Julia confronted him. You're distant. You barely talk to me anymore. What's going on? Alan forced a smile. Just work stress, Julia frowned. Is it about that new patient? Daniel? Alan froze. How do you know his name? Julia blinked. You said it. In your sleep. You kept saying, don't let him in. Alan's stomach dropped. That night, he locked every door, checked every window, but as he turned off the lights, he saw something in the reflection of the glass. For just an instant, in the darkened living room window, Daniel's pale face staring back. When Alan spun around, the room was empty. By now, Alan didn't just fear for his sanity. He feared for his family, for the wife who asked too many questions, for the daughter who slept with her rabbit because Daniel Holt wasn't staying in the office anymore. Daniel was inside the house. Narrator voice. Alan Mercer had built his career on control, on guiding others through the fog of memory, trauma, guilt. But now, the fog had turned inward, and the man across from him, Daniel Holt, was tearing down the walls Alan had spent a lifetime building. Session 4. The unwelcome memory. Daniel entered quietly, as always. He didn't sit right away. He wandered, running his hand along the bookshelf, pausing at the framed diploma. University of Chicago, Daniel murmured. You were 26 when you graduated. Your father wasn't there that day, was he? Alan stiffened. Sit down, Daniel. Daniel smiled faintly, obeying. Your father was drunk. Again. You told your mother it didn't matter, but you cried in the restroom before the ceremony. You thought no one saw. Alan's pen fell from his hand. That's not in your file? Alan whispered. No, Daniel said. His voice was calm, almost kind. It's in your head. And I'm in there too. Alan's pulse thundered. This stops now. Whatever game you're playing, it ends. Daniel tilted his head. I'm not playing. I'm reminding you. Alan swallowed hard. Reminding me of what? Daniel leaned forward. His eyes darkened. Of the boy in the river. Alan hadn't thought about the river in 20 years. He had locked it away, buried beneath work, marriage, fatherhood. But Daniel's words were keys, and the lock broke open. The river Alan's mind spun backward. He was 12 again. Summer. The old quarry outside town. He and his best friend, Mark, daring each other to jump from the rocks. Alan remembered the splash, the panic, Mark thrashing in the water, calling his name. Alan frozen, paralyzed with fear. By the time he ran for help, it was too late. Mark's body was pulled from the river. Hours later, Alan had told himself for years it wasn't his fault, that he was just a boy, that nothing could have changed. But Daniel's voice cut through the memory like a blade. You could have saved him. Alan shook his head violently. No, no, I couldn't. You watched him drown, Daniel said, eyes unblinking. And you ran. You left him. Alan slammed his fist against the desk. Stop it. But Daniel only smiled. Truth doesn't stop. The confession at home. That night, Alan sat in the darkened kitchen. Julia found him with his head in his hands. What's wrong? She whispered. Alan's voice cracked. When I was a boy, I let someone die. Julia blinked, stunned. What are you talking about? Alan couldn't meet her eyes. My best friend. He drowned. I froze. I ran. I never told anyone the truth. Julia reached for his hand, but he pulled away. Daniel knows. Alan whispered. Her face tightened. Alan, Daniel is your patient. Alan's eyes glistened. No, he's not. Guilt has a taste. Bitter. Metallic. It clings to the tongue and never fades. Alan had buried that taste long ago, but Daniel forced it back to the surface. And now, Julia, too, could smell the rot of secrets seeping from her husband's past. Session 4 continues. The next day, Alan nearly canceled, but something compelled him back into the office. Daniel was already there, sitting in the chair, waiting. You didn't tell her everything, Daniel said calmly. Alan's voice shook. I told her enough. No, Daniel whispered. You didn't tell her what you did after. Alan's breath hitched. The memory slammed into him. Not just running, not just leaving Mark to drown, but the lie he told afterward, the story he invented, the way he cried at the funeral, convincing everyone he had tried his best, the secret pride he carried that no one ever suspected. Alan's hands trembled. Stop. Daniel leaned closer. His whisper was colder than the river water. You lied, and you liked it. Alan's stomach churned. He bolted from his chair, pacing the room. I'm ending this. You hear me? No more sessions. Daniel didn't move. You can't end me, Alan. Because I'm not here. Alan froze. What? What are you? Daniel's faint smile widened. I'm the part of you that never drowned. The truth was no longer confined to dreams or files. It lived now, breathing, speaking, in the man across from him. And Alan Mercer realized he wasn't fighting a patient anymore. He was fighting himself. Every therapist fears losing control of the room. But for Dr. Alan Mercer, control had already slipped away. And what Daniel Holt gave him next wasn't just fear, it was ruin. The session that unraveled Alan sat stiffly at his desk. He hadn't slept. His tie was loose, his hair unkempt. Daniel entered, as calm as ever, and sat without a word. Alan forced himself to begin. Daniel, therapy is a structured process. What you've been doing, bringing up my personal life, my past, that's not acceptable. Daniel tilted his head. Then why do you keep listening? Alan clenched his jaw. Because I'm your doctor. Daniel smiled faintly. No, you're my story. Alan's voice rose. This is over. He reached for the phone on his desk to call security. But before he could dial, Daniel spoke softly. Do you really want me to tell them about the river? About the cigarettes? About the lies? Alan froze. His hand hovered over the phone. Daniel leaned back, comfortable. Go ahead. Call. See who they believe. The respected doctor or the man who hides everything from his own family. Alan's hand dropped. His chest heaved. You're destroying my life, he whispered. Daniel's voice was steady. No, I'm showing it to you. The first complaint the next morning, Alan arrived at the clinic to whispers. His receptionist avoided eye contact. A sealed envelope sat on his desk. A formal complaint from a patient, not Daniel, another client. They claimed Alan had fallen asleep during a session, that he had been distracted, inattentive. Alan's hands shook as he read. It wasn't true. At least, he didn't remember it being true. He rushed through the day, sweating, fumbling his words. By afternoon, 2 more patients canceled. When he returned to his office that evening, Daniel's file was open on his desk. He hadn't left it that way, and a note, written in his own handwriting, stared back at him. Stop pretending. Paranoia bleeds into reality quietly. First a whisper, then a shadow, then a blade across the fabric of your life. And Alan Mercer was already bleeding. The dinner party. Julia insisted they attend the neighborhood dinner party. You need a break, she said. Alan smiled thinly, agreed. But he couldn't stop scanning the faces in the crowded living room, waiting for Daniel to appear. Halfway through the evening, Julia pulled him aside. You're pale. You're shaking. What is wrong with you? Alan swallowed. He's here. Who? Alan scanned the crowd. He could have sworn he'd seen Daniel in the corner, a glass of wine in his hand. But when he looked again, no one was there. Julia's expression hardened. You need help. Alan laughed bitterly. That's what I do for a living. The case review. 2 days later, Alan's supervisor called him in. We've had multiple complaints. Patients saying you're distracted, unfocused. One said you frightened her. Alan's throat tightened. That's not true. The supervisor's eyes narrowed. Alan, I reviewed your notes. They're incoherent. Entire pages. Blank. Or worse. He slid a file across the desk. Alan opened it. His own handwriting stared back. Chaotic scribbles, drawings of rivers, faces, words repeated over and over. Daniel Holt. Daniel Holt. Daniel Holt. Alan's vision blurred. He didn't remember writing any of it. The supervisor's voice was firm. Take a leave of absence. Effective immediately. The career he had built, the reputation he had polished, the trust he had earned, all of it crumbling, and Daniel Holt's smile lingered in the ruins. Session 5. The replacementalin returned to his office. That evening, despite the suspension, he had to confront him. He had to end it. And there Daniel was, waiting in the chair. Alan's voice was ragged. You've ruined me. Daniel's reply was soft. No, Alan, you ruined yourself. I just let everyone else see it. Alan's fists clenched. Why me? Why are you doing this to me? Daniel leaned forward. For the first time, his smile widened into something sharp, almost feral. Because you chose me. Alan shook his head violently. I never... Yes, you did, Daniel whispered. The night before our first session, you dreamed me. You brought me here. You wanted me. Alan stumbled back, breathless. That's not possible. Daniel's eyes glinted. Isn't it? Who's the patient, Alan? Who's the doctor? Who's writing the file? Alan collapsed into his chair, hands shaking uncontrollably. His notes lay open before him, but the words weren't his. Session 5. Dr. Alan Mercer begins to break. And there it was, the truth, or something close to it. Alan wasn't treating Daniel Holt. Daniel Holt was treating him, session by session, page by page, until nothing remained but the story Daniel wanted told. Narrator voice. Paranoia isolates. It peels away every bond, every tether to reality. And as Alan Mercer slipped deeper into Daniel Holt's grip, even the people who loved him most began to turn away, which, of course, was exactly what Daniel wanted. The intervention. Julia's voice trembled as she confronted him in the kitchen. You're scaring Emily, she said. Alan rubbed his temples. I'm protecting her. From what? Julia demanded. From your patient? From your dreams? Alan, listen to yourself. You need help. Alan's voice broke. You don't understand. He's here. He's always here. Julia's eyes filled with tears. If you don't see someone, if you don't get treatment, I'll take Emily and leave. Alan staggered back, chest hollow. Julia, please. But Julia turned away, carrying their daughter down the hall. Alan was left alone, the silence deafening. And then from the darkened corner of the kitchen, Daniel spoke. She's right, you know. You do need help. Alan spun, rage boiling. You're tearing my family apart. Daniel's smile was faint. No, you are. The shrink who became the Casey Allen's supervisor called again. The board was reviewing his license. Rumors spread. He was unstable, paranoid, dangerous. Colleagues stopped returning calls. Friends avoided him. One evening, desperate, Alan dialed an old mentor, Dr. Klein, a steady voice from his past. Klein, please, you have to believe me. There's this patient. Klein interrupted, gentle but firm. Alan, there is no Daniel Holt. Alan's hand tightened on the phone. What are you talking about? I checked. No records, no referrals, no insurance claims. Nothing. You've been treating no one. Alan's throat closed. That's impossible. He's real. He's in my office right now. But when Alan looked up, the chair was empty. Delusion or design, which was worse? To have created Daniel Holt in his own fractured mind, or to have invited something more darker into the world. Either way, Alan Mercer was alone. The notebook, Alan scoured his files, desperate for proof, patient logs, session notes, scribbles. Every page read the same. Dozens of entries, his own handwriting, but he had no memory of writing them. One line repeated across the margins, over and over. I am the patient. Alan hurled the notebook across the room. It landed open, pages fluttering. From the corner, Daniel's voice drifted. Good progress. The family fractures. That night, Alan heard Emily crying. He rushed to her room. She sat upright in bed, clutching her rabbit. Daddy, there's a man in the corner. Alan's blood froze. He turned, and there was Daniel, standing in the shadows, smiling. Alan lunged, but when he flicked the lamp on, the corner was empty. Emily sobbed. He said Mommy's going to leave. Alan held her tight, trembling. No, no, she won't. I won't let her. But deep down, he knew Daniel was right. Alan confronted Daniel the next day, trembling with exhaustion. What do you want from me? He demanded. Daniel's reply was calm. For you to accept it. Accept what? Alan shouted. That I'm not here to destroy you. I'm here to replace you. Alan's chest seized. Replace me? Daniel leaned forward. His eyes gleamed. You've been running from guilt your whole life, hiding behind your degree, your office, your family. But deep down, you want out, don't you? You want someone else to carry it. Alan shook his head violently. No. Daniel's smile widened. Then why did you dream me? Alan collapsed into the chair, sobs racking his chest. He had no answer. Acceptance is the final stage. Acceptance of loss, of guilt, of madness. And as Daniel Holt whispered in his ear, Alan Mercer felt the last fragments of his life slipping through his fingers. By now, Alan Mercer's life was unrecognizable. The office he had once ruled, the family he had cherished, even his own mind, all were territories Daniel Holt had quietly claimed. And the closer Alan came to seeing the truth, the harder Daniel pressed. Alan arrived home late. Julia was sitting on the couch, Emily asleep beside her. I can't do this anymore, Julia whispered. I'm scared. I don't know what's real anymore. Alan swallowed. I'm trying, Julia. I'm fighting. She shook her head. No, you're not. He's here. He's inside your head, and now he's inside ours. Alan froze. The room seemed darker. Shadows stretched across the walls. He felt watched. From the corner, Daniel's voice drifted. Good evening, Alan. We meet again. Alan spun. Empty. He blinked. Daniel? He called. A faint laugh echoed. You see, Alan, you can't stop me. Not here. Not anywhere. You invited me in when you dreamed me first. And now, the voice grew louder, as if it came from the walls themselves. I take what is mine. That night, Alan checked the mirrors. Julia had insisted, just to make sure he's not real. But every reflection betrayed him. His own face looked hollow, paler. Behind him, in every pane of glass, a faint figure. Daniel, watching, smiling, waiting. Alan shook violently. Stop it. Stop it now. The figure didn't vanish. Instead, it leaned closer, whispering, You're done resisting. Soon, everyone will see it. Alan's breath hitched. He could feel Emily stir in the room. Her small voice, Daddy, the man's in my room. Alan's heart slammed. He turned. The corner was empty. Emily clutched her rabbit, wide-eyed. I saw him. He smiled. Alan felt the final threads of his control snap. The following day, Alan returned to the office. Desperate, Daniel was sitting in his chair. Calm, composed. You need to end this, Alan said, before it gets worse. Daniel tilted his head. It's already worse, and worse is only the beginning. Alan slammed a fist on the desk. I will not let you harm my family. Daniel's voice softened. You already have. By denying me, you forced this to happen. Now, let's see how it feels when the patient becomes the doctor. Alan staggered back. Every note in his notebook seemed to rearrange itself. Words he hadn't written appearing. Session 8. Alan Mercer is the case. Daniel Holt is the clinician. Reality is a file, and this file is mine. Julia called Alan at the office. Her voice trembled. Alan, he's in the house. I see him. Emily sees him. We're terrified. Alan's chest tightened. He can't be real. It's impossible. Julia's sobs were clear over the phone. Then why can't we escape him? Alan realized Daniel had crossed the final threshold. Not just in his mind, in their lives, in their home. He tried to calm her. Stay together. Lock the doors. I'll figure this out. But as he hung up, he heard a soft laugh echoing through the office walls. Daniel's whisper, I am already there. By the 8th session, Alan Mercer's life was no longer his own. Daniel Holt wasn't just a patient. He was a force, an idea, a shadow, a presence in every corner of Alan's mind and home. And as Alan looked around, he realized the game wasn't about winning anymore. It was about survival. Every story has its climax, every nightmare its breaking point. And for Dr. Alan Mercer, the final act had arrived. Daniel Holt, patient turned master, would decide who remained the observer and who became the observed. Alan returned home late that evening, exhausted and hollow-eyed. The house was dark, too dark. He fumbled with the keys, doors locked, windows shut. Still, a faint, cold voice greeted him from the shadows. Welcome home, Alan. He froze. Empty hallway. No one in sight. Daniel, he whispered. A faint rustle from the living room. When he entered, the lights flickered. There, standing by the couch, was Daniel. Pale, calm, omnipresent. Alan's chest heaved. This isn't real, Daniel smiled. Real enough. The final offer, Alan, fell to his knees. What do you want from me? Why are you doing this? Daniel's voice was gentle, almost tender. To be free, he said, to exist fully, and for you to understand. The only way is to give me your place. Alan shook violently. I can't. You're insane. Daniel tilted his head. Insane or enlightened? I see what you hide, what you deny. You've been carrying guilt for decades, for a boy lost in the river, for secrets from your family, for lies you told yourself and others. Alan's throat tightened. That's not fair. Daniel leaned closer. It's not about fairness. It's about acceptance. Accept me, or lose everything. Accept me, or be erased. The household nightmare. Alan stumbled through the house. Every room was alive with whispers, shadows, glimpses of Daniel. Emily cried softly in her sleep. Julia whispered her own fear. Alan's attempts to lock doors, switch on lights, call for help, all failed. Every intervention he tried only intensified Daniel's presence. He realized resistance was impossible. Daniel didn't just inhabit his mind. Daniel had become his life. The mirror confrontational and faced the mirror in the hallway. He stared at his reflection, expecting himself. Instead, he saw Daniel's face, smiling, calm, victorious. Alan's voice cracked. No, no, this can't be. Daniel's whisper emanated from everywhere. You are me, and I am you. Accept it, or vanish. Alan sank to the floor, tears streaming, trembling hands covering his face. The surrender hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had lost meaning. Alan finally whispered, broken. Fine, I accept you. Take it. Take it all. Just stop hurting them. A long silence. Then, in the reflection, Alan saw himself, not pale, not hollow-eyed, smiling faintly, but Daniel's eyes were in that smile. Julia and Emily slept peacefully. Alan felt a calm he hadn't known in months. The house was quiet, for now, and so it ended, in a whisper and a surrender. Alan Mercer, the respected psychologist, had given up control. The patient, Daniel Holt, had claimed the narrative. But who truly won? Perhaps no one, for the mind is a fragile thing. And in the end, every story, every nightmare, belongs to the one who dares to inhabit it fully. Some stories end with closure, some with peace. But for Dr. Alan Mercer, the end is not a conclusion. It's a continuation, a life shared with a presence that cannot be escaped, a patient who is no longer just a patient, and a mind that can never rest. The new routine days turned into weeks. Alan returned to work. Though the office felt alien, every step echoed differently. His colleagues smiled politely, but avoided eye contact. Patients nodded, but never lingered. He was present, yet absent, a ghost among the living. At night, he walked home. Julia and Emily were there, but something had shifted. Alan felt the subtle but constant awareness. Daniel was there too, watching, guiding, waiting. He learned to live with it. The whispers became a background hum, neither terrifying nor comforting, simply reality. The mirror revisited. Alan stood before the hallway mirror. His reflection, now familiar, bore a hint of Daniel's features, smiles, expressions, even posture. They intertwined. He whispered, almost casually, I accept you. A faint, approving voice echoed in response. Good. We are ready. Alan's lips curved slightly, not fully happy, not fully himself, but the tension had dulled. Not peace, survival. The family observation, Emily giggled in the kitchen, Julia humming softly. Alan watched them, heart aching with guilt and love intertwined. And Daniel was there, not in shadow, not in a chair, but inside Alan's awareness, an inseparable companion. When Emily dropped her toy, Alan picked it up, and in his mind he heard Daniel's quiet observation. Careful, she watches everything. Alan nodded. Yes, I know. The house felt alive, not with fear, but with the persistent hum of Daniel's presence. The office. Return weeks. Later, Alan returned to the clinic with a new approach. Notes were pristine, sessions orderly, patients comfortable, colleagues unaware of the collapse that had happened behind the closed doors of his mind. Yet every so often, a shadow flickered across the ceiling, a whisper from the corner of the office. Alan paused, pen in hand, Notebook open. I am ready, he murmured, and somewhere in the room, Daniel's faint smile seemed to answer, "We are one." The final whisper late. At night, Alan sat alone in his study. He listened to the silence, or what he thought was silence. From the corner, Daniel's voice spoke softly. Not a patient, not a doctor, a story, our story, and it never ends. Alan exhaled, not fear, not anger, acceptance. The clock ticked, the shadows shifted, life continued. But Alan Mercer knew the truth. There would be no more waking moments free from observation, no more peace, just a presence, a whisper, a story that lived inside him forever. And that, dear listener, is the end of this chapter. Alan Mercer survived. He walked among the living, cared for his family, and returned to his patients. But in his mind, Daniel Holt remained, forever present, forever patient, forever the master of a narrative that can never truly end.